The past couple of weeks, we've been just talking through Jesus, and has already been shared this this thought that Jesus went where he was invited, and coming from this quote, as I mentioned, that we heard from Darrell Johnson, and he just said, Jesus went where he was invited. Doesn't matter what condition you were in, how righteous, how unrighteous, worthy, unworthy, no matter background. It didn't matter, but he said everywhere as we look when Jesus was invited, he went. And not only that, we see powerful things happen. We see miracles happen. It's not just like, okay, cool, now Jesus is here, but that things change, that there's a response, not just in people, but the environment, the room, spiritually, physically, emotionally, in so many different ways. And this just got me, and this was actually a year ago that we heard this statement, and just thinking about it over and over and more and more. And then just really feeling God just to speak and to come in and study this. And last week, we talked about Matthew and Jesus calling Matthew, him being in that tax office and that place of, being a Jew, but being ostracized, being pushed out, being one that was hated by his own people and not even allowed to do the things that you should be able to do as a Jewish person, because he was siding with the Roman government, and because most tax collectors were swindlers and cheats and liars and all this. And so there was this view of who he was or who a tax collector was, and Jesus just comes by and just looks at him and says, "Follow me." It's like, okay. And jumps up and follows him, and then he invites Jesus to his house, and then we see that there at his house, then sinners, tax collectors, all those that were maybe his friends, maybe those that felt comfortable because they were going to be there in a place with somebody else that was ostracized, that's now sitting with Jesus, that they are all coming in. And then the religious people come and say, "Hey, why is Jesus sitting with tax collectors and sinners?" So they speak these things over Matthew and these others. And maybe even these others or Matthew believed or even spoke this over themselves. And so it's just talked about. I don't want to preach that again, but I do want to preach it again. That when we invite him in, that it confronts this view that maybe we have of others or even ourselves, what we've been saying about others or maybe even saying about ourselves, that is that we or somebody else isn't deserving of being in relationship with Jesus. It confronts that shame. It confronts that self-righteousness of thinking that somebody else doesn't deserve. It confronts really the flesh and says, hey, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you've done or they've done. This is why Christ came. Today in Matthew chapter 8, we look into this moment where Jesus is coming into Capernaum, and we see a centurion now. So a Roman soldier. So now you have not just somebody that is a Jewish person that's ostracized and pushed out, but then now you have somebody that's not even Jewish, somebody that is a Gentile, somebody that is way outside of that place that many would say is worthy or, knows what they need to know, whatever, way outside of that. And he hears that Jesus is coming, and let's just read this together first. In Matthew 8:5, it says, "Now when Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, pleading with him, saying, 'Lord, my servant is lying at home, paralyzed, dreadfully tormented.' And Jesus said to him, 'I will come and heal him.'" In Luke, in this story, it says that his servant was sick and ready to die. So he was dreadfully tormented, like seriously tormented. He was, in looking up this word in the definition, you see that, it doesn't necessarily say it's a spiritual demonic torment, but there was a torment of his mind and his spirit, of pain and pressure and things that were going on in his body, where, he's coming to this place of losing it and about to die. And Jesus said to him, "I will come," right? He didn't even ask him to come, really. In this, the way that it's portrayed here in Matthew, he's just pleading with Jesus about his servant, his heart and his compassion that he has, which is also another whole story, for his servant, who in that day, really, if a servant, those that had a servant, a slave, if they got sick, it was totally acceptable to just kill them because they were not able to do what they were supposed to do anymore. But now he says, he's like, "Listen, my servant is tormented, about to die." Doesn't even in here, it doesn't even say that he just like, "Please come." He just pleaded the cause of his servant. And Jesus said, I'm going to come. Verse 8, the centurion answered and said, "Lord, I'm not worthy that you should come under my roof, but only speak a word, and my servant will be healed. For I also am a man under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to this one, 'Go,' and he goes, and to another, 'Come,' and he comes, and to my servant, 'Do this,' and he does it." I don't know about you. I love that he brings in his servant here. You see how much care and affection he has. Again, also, I don't know about you, my mind, it's a little bit hard to wrap around or get over the fact that this is servant. Like, I don't have one. I shouldn't have one. It's not acceptable today. But just in this place, where they were, that bringing even in his saying why he's not worthy for Jesus to come. He says, "And then I say to my servant, 'Do this,' and he does it." In verse 10, when Jesus heard it, he marveled and said to those who followed, "Assuredly, I say to you, I have not found such great faith, not even in Israel." Assuredly. He says, I assure you. Let me make this very clear, and that all of us are sure of what I'm saying right now. I haven't found as great a faith as this man who isn't even supposed to be able to be in relationship with me, who even doesn't know probably all the things that supposedly you were supposed to know to be in a relationship with God, or to know who God was, or what he had done for Israel for years and years, or 1,000, 2,000. To be righteous, to be holy, to be all these things. Didn't have any of this stuff. But Jesus says, assuredly I say this to you, that I've not found such great faith, not even in those that have what they are supposed to have, this understanding, this relationship, this knowledge of what God has done, all that. Man, I don't know. You guys, are you okay out there? Verse 11, he says, I say to you that many will come. So he switches into this moment now. And we're going to go through this and dive deeper into other things. And whoa. Verse 11, and I say to you that many will come from east to west and sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the sons of the kingdom will be cast out into outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then Jesus said to the centurion, go your way, and as you believe, so let it be done for you. And his servant was healed that same hour. I'm going to stay for just a moment in this, because this isn't the main part of what I want to get to, but this latter part of this story here, where Jesus says, assuredly I have not even seen as great a faith as I have seen in this man and what he is saying right now. I haven't even seen that in Israel where it should be seen. In the church, can I make this real like today, right? He goes to, and Jesus is walking by, and somebody comes that is far away from church and hasn't been there for a long time, but hears that Jesus is coming. Hears that Jesus is coming by. He's heard that, hey, there's this guy named Jesus, and he's supposed to be the Messiah, and they're saying all these things about him. And actually, there's crowds that are coming, and people that are sick, and they're being healed, and there are all these things, and you can't really explain it, but this stuff is happening. And so you have this bartender that is out there, not really knowing of who God is, and having studied his Bible to know, what all this stuff is about, but but his son or his brother or whatever. But this bartender, he's living out there in the world, just doing the thing. That thing that really kind of separates, many of us from feeling like we can be friends. Because we're in the church, and he's this. But he hears that Jesus is coming through and all this stuff has been happening. And he's like, listen. My servant is being tormented. He's got palsy, it says. He's losing everything and in pain so much that he's tormented and almost dead. And I've heard that maybe that you can do something about this, that you have healed people, that you can do a miracle. And Jesus, he says, it's like, yeah, I'll come. Yeah, I'll be there. Right? Because when he was invited, he went. When Jesus said, it's like, I'll come. I'll come there and be with him because I see that there's a need. Because you've asked me, because you've pled the case of your servant, saying this is the situation. And I've heard that you're the guy that talked to. And Jesus said, I will come and heal him. And the centurion answered and said, Lord, I'm not worthy. In verse 8, I'm not worthy that you should come under my roof, but only speak a word. My servant will be healed. See, in this time, it actually was like against the rules or against the custom of the Jewish people for them to go into a Gentile's house. And Jesus was aware of that. The Pharisees, the Sadducees, the religious leaders, they were all aware of that. The surprising thing is that the centurion soldier is aware of that. Seemingly. But what's amazing in this moment is you have this moment where the centurion soldier is saying, he's like, listen, it's almost this moment of like, I know there's this thing. I've heard or somebody's told me before that, that we're not in the same places as you, so that, you're going to get dirty or somehow I'm going to defile you if you come into my house and be with me. And he has this respect and this concern. Like, sometimes those that are outside the church have more concern for people than the church does. And we see that here in this scripture. Like the fact that he's not being selfish. He is thinking not only about that, he's not like saying, I'm not worthy. Like you don't. But also that he's coming pleading for his servant. Like this isn't me pleading for myself. I'm pleading for my employee. Begging you, please come. He was thinking about others. He was thinking about Christ. He was thinking about his servant. He was showing a humility. Surprising again. This is a centurion, a Roman soldier, head of, I think it's say like 60 or 100. The leader, the one that told them to, what they were supposed to be doing, training them, telling them where to sleep, how to live, how to fight, how to do. You go here and you go. Because I'm also under authority, and when somebody higher than me tells me, you go here, I go. That's how we live. And he says, I'm not worthy for you to come under my roof, but just say the word. See, humility cares for others. Pride cares for self. It's so crazy to see in many of these stories how you have those that were supposedly the outcasts caring for others, and those that are supposedly the church, the Pharisees, caring for themselves. That's not my message today, but just a little side note, okay? But in this, so I'm not worthy that you would even come under my roof, but just say the word, and it'll be done. Just say the word, because he knew what authority is. And because he says, because I'm a man of authority and under authority. Really, to understand true authority is not just to be the authority, but to be under authority. He says, I know authority, and I've heard about who you are. Again, right? Like, I haven't been in church all my life and know all these things, but from what I've heard, I can see that you have authority, and I know what authority is. So even though I'm really new to this, I know that what you have is authority, and that you don't even need to step into my house. I don't even feel like I'm worthy for you to step into my house, but I also know that you don't even need to get here in order for something to happen. I don't think you guys are as excited about this as I am. It's like I know what authority is, and you have authority. So I know that you don't actually have to open my door and come into my house in order for what I am asking, what I am pleading you about to happen. Right? He's saying, I know that it's not just some things that you can do, but it is all things. It's not just for some people, but for all people. It's not just the easy things, but everything that you can do. Right? And you're like, oh, yeah. But that's what we get caught up in. We're like, God. You're telling your friend, like, this is going on, it's happening. And they're like, did you ask God? Did you pray? It's like, man, this is a big one. Like, somehow it's too big, It's like, no, it's just like, I'm not sure if God, if he would want to deal with this one. I'm not sure if he wants to get into this mess. I'm not sure because I feel like this thing is big. This sickness is so much, or this torment is so much. This thing that I've been dealing with, it just feels so much. And somehow this thing that feels like, and we don't realize, right? Because we tend to see things in perspective of our authority. And the less authority we understand that we have, the more we gauge God on that perspective of authority. I feel weak myself. I have trouble understanding how strong God is what I'm saying. Understanding. I have problems feeling strong or feeling like I have authority, and it really relates whenever I'm thinking about Christ and how I feel about his authority. He says, I know that you have authority. And then not just things for those that are considered righteous, or maybe think that they're righteous. How about that? Because that's kind of what it was in the day. There was a lot that thought that they're righteous, that thought they deserved. The problem is that when you think you deserve something is when you're getting further and further away from the one that you're trying to be close to. He says, he didn't have all these things that one would think that you were supposed to have, but what he did have was faith. Really the only thing that he had. An understanding, a natural understanding of authority that caused him to know that, like, if you really have this authority, you can say, it'll be done, it'll be done. That caused him to believe and have faith, and that's all that he had. He had faith. He believed in Christ. He showed such great faith in Jesus' word. Understood that with just the word, right? And of course, because he is the word. Because, I mean, for me, I say many of us, and that have known Christ for a while, and knowing, right? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. What was made was made by him. He was the Word that was spoken, that created everything that we can see. It was through him and by him. This guy didn't even know that. All he knew was like, I understand natural authority and I can have faith because I see. It's like you gotta, Like if you have something, you can recognize it. It's like game recognizes game. It's a younger thing probably. Maybe not real young. That's kind of more, I think that's more our age. Isn't it, Matt? Like, maybe in your 40s, 30s, like you get that. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? It's like you got game, you recognize game. I got this, I recognize that you got it too. It caused him to believe, to trust. It says, if I say go, they go. If I say do, they do. If I say come here, they come here. Game recognizes game. You say go, they go. You say come here, they come here. You say be gone. You say be healed. You say whatever you say, and it happens. And in verse 10, when Jesus heard this, right? He was headed. He was going. I'm going to your house. I hear you. I see you. Don't think that I don't hear what you're saying. He's like, when you ask, I will come. And we're going to talk, I think maybe next week, about delays. But it may not look exactly like you think, but he will come. Might not be exactly when, but he will come. Says Jesus, Says Jesus, when Jesus heard it. Now, I don't know if, no, I was going to say I don't know if there is anybody here, but I'm going to say this, that I know there is, and I feel like this is something that I'm supposed to say because you need to hear this. That Jesus hears you. That God hears you. He's not deaf. He doesn't have earplugs in because he wants to ignore you. And I don't know what it is, but cry out and believe. I want to be careful because I don't want to get on a whole different thing, but cry out. Sometimes the things have to do with us more than they have to do with God, why things aren't happening. So let's come in humility, understanding He's God, the authority, understanding who He is, His promises, what He has spoken, all these things. And because it hasn't happened, like, man, it's next week. Okay. He hears you. Well, let's come and not make a checklist of what God hasn't or hasn't done, but maybe we should make a checklist of what we have or haven't done. He heard it. He heard it. He marveled. Said to those who followed, assuredly I say to you, I have not found such great faith, not even in Israel. A man's understanding, this man that was a centurion, not a religious leader, not even a Jewish person, a Gentile, didn't really know much about God or Christ, but he'd heard some things, and he understood authority. And he said, I can believe in that. And he believed. And he had faith and said, I am in need. I'm in need. And so what I'm going to do is ask him into this need. And this guy, this centurion, of all the people, his disciples, John the Baptist, like all the dudes, the guys, the bros, the family, all those that he grew up. This guy, this centurion, this one that the bartender, or whatever, I made that up, but just to bring it in here, it's good to. That's what I need to do, because I need to see this as where I'm at right now and where I sometimes can see people, or how I see people, right? That guy, bartender. Of all these people that were around him, this guy, the bartender that just heard of what he did and understood authority, knew that Christ had authority, and it caused Jesus. It made him marvel. I got it. I'm kind of upset, because that confronts me. Because what I just thought is that there might be people today that are out there that don't have the years that I've had walking with God, or trying to. I'm not really doing that great of a job at it, really. I feel like Paul, when Paul is just like, I'm the least, I really suck at this. But he didn't, But it confronts, because then I think about that there's maybe out there, that place that we're like, I'm probably not going to go in there because I don't want to be associated with those people. I'm not sure if I'm going to hang around there. And again, I'm not saying go hang out at places. What I'm saying is that's just what's in your heart whenever you think about that place. That'll tell you something. Is it love and compassion, or is it contempt or anger, hatred? Okay. But this confronts me, because I'm sitting here thinking that God, I want to walk with God and to know Him. Christ, I invite you in and want you to be with me and be in this place so that we're walking, doing this thing together. And what this scripture tells me is that there's probably somebody out there that I may have put a label on or said, look at that person. like that. Yeah, I'm going to say bartender. I'm really not trying, but to give a perspective or whatever. That person. And thinking right now that there might be a faith or an understanding of his authority that makes him marvel that I haven't had or done or been. That's a little, you guys are like, ooh, okay. Yeah, I'm saying that. Even I'm not just saying this, I'm saying it about ourselves. Like, look. And not saying that to get onto us, but what I'm saying is to say that I want to see this and say, I don't want to be like the religious leader. I want to be like the centurion. You know what I mean, right? I want to be like the one that understood authority and knew what authority was and knew that just like I'm going to share my need, my burden, this thing, and you are going to come because where you're invited, you come. But then I'm going to know for a fact that it doesn't have to be some big thing or be exactly how I want it or what I wanted it to look like. And I also know that it doesn't have to be something where, like, it could just happen. Sometimes we want to see this, like, this big miraculous like thing, and Christ is there, he's doing the stuff, and all of a sudden like all these things start happening. You know what it says? It says that at that hour they were healed. The servant was healed. And I think, what I think about that? The more we understand the authority of Christ and who he is and what he can do, what he has done, like when we understand what authority is and then we come to these moments, it's not going to be about seeking some big, I want to see signs and wonders. No, I just want to wake up and it's all done. I mean, I don't need to see signs and wonders. I think people do need to see signs and wonders. The world does. But the fact that just you have such great faith. Jesus didn't even I lost my place because Jesus didn't even speak to the sickness. And he did at times. He didn't rebuke the thing that was tormenting. It says here in verse 13, then Jesus said to the centurion, go your way. So he just told them, yeah, you can go back to your house. You can just go back, because the faith that you've had, and as you have believed and understood authority, and that the faith that you've had has made this happen. As you have believed, so let it be done. And a servant was healed that same hour. He says, the faith, the understanding of who I am, and the faith that you've had has brought this thing to the place that it needed to be. And so much so, that it just flowed. It just happened. Right? It came from Christ. He was invited. He said he was going to go, that he was going to heal the servant. But in all this interaction and Christ saying that I haven't seen faith like this. And he's like, yeah, in Luke it said that he was on his way, and that, like, while he wasn't far off, the centurion's like, hey, I'm not worthy, like, just don't even come. Like, just say the word. And he was on his way, almost there. And hearing what this centurion said, this faith and this understanding of the authority of Christ, and his believing, knowing that you don't even have to come in my house, just say the word. And I believe just in that moment that he's like, listen, man, your trust and your faith is so great that I don't even have to say the word. My Bible doesn't tell me exactly that's what Jesus thought, but that's the feeling that it makes me have. So you can take that not as written word of God. You can take that as what I believe it is that Christ is like, oh yeah, the house is there. I was on my way. Wow. I'm marveling at your faith, your understanding. When I've been trying to teach my disciples and these religious people, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, coming at me this way and that way and questioning and definitely not believing, many of them, definitely not having faith and not believing. And I'm trying to teach my disciples, and it's kids, it's work, like I just imagine he's like, come on, guys. And now I was just walking on my way to your house, and then you just saying this, the faith that you have, the trust, the understanding that you can just believe and know that it's going to happen. I haven't seen it. It's like, yeah, wow. It's just, yeah, go back. It's going to happen. It just walks away. I feel like sometimes I'm like, God, I need you here. I need you to come. I need you to be in this place and this with me. Help me do it, And I see this and I'm like, oh, dude, if I was just like, yeah, God, I know that you can do it. Let's do it. I know you've said that you are with me. I know you've said you're good. I know you said you're my healer. I know you've said you're my protector, my key. You're everything that I need. I know you've said all these things, and I believe. And so I don't even need to beg and plead that you come and just, it's like I feel like a baby sometimes. I just need you to hold me, guys. Like, hold me. And I could just be like, God, this is happening. And I know you said you're good. And I know you've said you will come through. I know you've said you will heal. And I believe it. I'm going home. Will you stand with me?